They are our fathers, brothers, mothers and sisters, neighbors, heroes. Canada's veterans, their courage, service, and sacrifice will never be forgotten. On November 11th, let's remember them. A message from the Government of Canada.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's Vin Robinson here. We're here with Ron Anderson today from Legion 4 St. James in Winnipeg. We are practicing social distancing, and we wanted to make sure that the public at large see that. But we want to get a little bit better acquainted today with Mr. Anderson, so let's remove the mask so that we can get a little more intimate.
My name is Ron Anderson, and I am presently the immediate past president of St. James Branch Number 4.
When were you drafted or enlisted?
We didn't have the draft, but I enlisted in the Canadian Armed Forces, or actually I enrolled in the Canadian Army in 1960 in Simcoe, Ontario, or was my hometown, and I went to London, Ontario, and joined the Canadian Army in the what was known at that time as a soldier apprentice training plan. That was a plan where they enrolled 16-year-old boys into the Army, into the several of the core elements, into the artillery, the engineers, the signal corps, transport, ordnance corps at that time. And what it was a program where they would train you for 2 years. They would give you 2 years of military training and 2 years of educational training, half day of each. So we would go through a period. Our basic training ended up being 2 years rather than the 9 weeks or whatever it was that they were doing with the regular force at that time. We were regular force soldiers, but we were under a special program. We had to be 16. We couldn't yet be 17. We had to have a parent's permission. So it was an intriguing program that went on for quite a few years. You would do half-day training on military occupation, and you would do a half-day in a civilian school.
Now, out of that enlistment, I mean, you've talked about a few things there. What was perhaps one of the most memorable things that happened during that enlistment?
I think the whole thing was memorable. I couldn't bring out an instance when you bring 100 16-year-old boys together and you put them in a barrack block. There's a lot of interesting things go on. You know, there was the normal schoolyard fights. There was the normal making new friends. Of course, I was the only one from my hometown, and we had boys that come from right across the country. Every province was representative. And I remember that I used to be known as an Upper Canadian because at that time Ontario had been previously known as Upper Canada, so we were Upper Canadians. But yeah, we had people from every province in Canada, and it in itself was very interesting because you learned the habits and the skills of people from right across the country.
Tell me one of the reasons why you chose to enlist.
Well, I didn't like school. I thought, here's a good way to get out of school. I'll join the Army. Biggest mistake ever, in that I've spent 38 years after that going to school. Because within the peacetime Army, you're forever training. You're learning new jobs, you're learning new parts of your own job, you're advancing in your career, so every time you turn around, you're back into a classroom. You're forever in a classroom, so I didn't get out of the classroom, I just put myself into the classroom for the next number of years.
Sounds like you're forever adapting
to
the
always,
environment.
yeah. At the time when I joined, I joined the Canadian Artillery, Royal Canadian Artillery, And within the artillery itself, there was many different occupational lines that you could take. There are many different courses that you take. I started out as a member of a gun detachment, learned the roles and what you do there. I trained as a surveyor. The artillery uses survey because the more accurate you can place your guns and your targets, the more accurate your fire is. They also trained in communications, they trained in driving the vehicles, right up to eventually I learned to drive a 109 self-propelled howitzer, so you were forever learning. And right to the day I retired, I was still learning things.
So for us that don't know that vehicle, maybe just tell us a brief description of what that vehicle is.
Well, the artillery uses the big guns, of course, and the 109 millimeter howitzer was a self-propelled vehicle. It looks like a tank, and people confuse it at times and would call it a tank, but it wasn't. It was a self-propelled gun. We also worked with 105 howitzers. We worked with pack howitzers. We worked with many different weaponry, and each one was different in its design, different in its use. So there was always a learning curve there. When you switched from one to another, you went from one unit to another.
During your service, were you ever deployed overseas?
I served in Europe. I served in NATO from 1968 to 1976. I served when I first went over, I was in central Germany, in the Ruhr Valley, they call it, where the brigade was located. I served out of a little town called Hamer, where the regiment was located. And in about 1970, we moved the brigade from there to the Black Forest area of southern Germany, just north of the Switzerland border. So, and I served there until I come home in 1976. In 1975 was there. I switched trades. Of course, we went through the period in 1968 where the Canadian Armed Forces was formed, in that they integrated the land, sea, and air elements into the Canadian Armed Forces land, sea, and air element. And so all of us turned into the green uniform, and we served as part of the Canadian Armed Forces, whatever element you were in, and I was in the land element at that time. In 1975, what we called at that time remuster, a change of trade, change of job. I went from the land element to the air element and worked with meteorology. So I became a meteorology technician in 1975, and then I spent the rest of my career as a med tech, learning again a whole new territory. So,
tell me a little bit about when you were overseas. How did you keep in touch with family or friends back home?
well, my family was with me.
Okay.
We had our families with us at that time, but keeping in touch with our extended family, our parents, our other relatives and whatnot, was by mail. The entire time I was in Germany, we never had a telephone, so we couldn't call home. And that was still in effect when I come home. I come home in 1976. We still didn't have telephones in our buildings, in our barracks. Nobody did. There was a business telephone on the base, but even call-out programs where they would call us out on either an exercise or an emergency or whatever it was. We used trucks with megaphones going through the permanent Marine quarters areas, summoning people in the middle of the night with these loudspeakers. That was quite interesting.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
When you touch back on Canadian soil, do you remember the feeling that you got?
So I suppose it was a nice feeling to be finally be back home. But I enjoyed my tour in Germany with the NATO troops. There was a lot of good things and normal things, some not so good, but it was interesting. So getting back to Canada was interesting. In that I was going to someplace new, someplace I'd never been before. I was posted back to, at the time, Prince Edward Island, Summerside, Prince Edward Island. We had an air base there, so I went back there as a med-tech for 2 years. And it was quite nice getting back to Canada and getting used to the Canadian way of doing things again, and meeting with old friends and making new ones.
Well, speaking of friends, did you ever learn something new about, perhaps a fellow service member? Some jokes or pranks that you guys used to play on each other, just to not be as serious all the time about?
Well, there was always pranksters going on, and I can't even think of them now. But there were good times and bad times, but. I find that you never remember the bad times as well as you remember the good times. And, the thing about being in the military and moving all of the time and changing regiments and changing postings and whatnot, you were always meeting new people. You were always meeting and making new friends. And particularly as you went up through the ranks, you would meet a new group of people, and it was very interesting times throughout. It was really nice to get back to Canada and then start doing the different postings in Canada. I served 2 years in Summerside, and then moved out to Shiloh, Manitoba, here, just
Not too far from here.
just west of here.
Yes.
Yeah. I've actually had about 4 postings to Shiloh, so that's where I started my career as an artilleryman in 1960. From there, after I graduated from the apprentice training battery, became a full-blown gunner in the artillery, I came to Winnipeg. At that time, there was a regiment of artillery in Winnipeg at the barracks that they've just started to tear down now. So that's kind of sad to see that go. I had some good times there too. At the time, we called it Fort Osborne Barracks. When the PPCI came in, it became Capillon Barracks, but I knew it as Fort Osborne. I was there until 65, I believe it was, and then I went back to Shiloh again and worked with the School of Artillery there. From there in 1984 is when I went to Germany.
Okay. For our viewers.
60,
sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just forgot the date.
Okay. So a bit for our viewers here. When this most recent pandemic of COVID-19 hit, it began to affect the Legions. It affected a number of businesses all throughout the country. What it did is it potentially slowed down volume that could come into the Legion. And the reason why these interviews are important is because we need to know our past to know where we're headed. So, Ron, we've dug into a little bit of the history here.
Yeah. Yes.
I'd like to get to the punchline. What do Legions mean to veterans?
Well, for the veteran, it is a place to go for them to go, where they can meet with like-minded people, maybe discuss their past, their career. It's a safe place for them to be. There's a lot of activities at Legions that they can participate in, or not. If they just want to sit and have a quiet beer, they can do that also. So it's an open area for them, and the Legion is there to remember them and to remember those that never came back from the conflicts that Canada has participated in. When it first started in 1926, the First World War veterans was a place for them to gather and remember. And that carried on right through the Second World War veterans, the Korean veterans, and the Gulf War veterans, the Afghanistan veterans. It is a place for them to gather themselves and either remember or discuss or whatnot for. But the big part is the word remember. They can remember their friends, they can remember their comrades.
If you do me a favor, just 20 seconds, just close your eyes. I want you to picture what Canada would be like if we didn't have our legions. And then I'd like you to comment on that.
I'm not sure what it would be like. First off, I wouldn't have any place to go. And I don't think, the veterans would be scattered. They wouldn't be able to gather, even if they only gather once a year in the month of November to remember their fallen comrades or those that they served with. And I say fallen comrades, I don't necessarily mean the fallen from the wars. I mean the comrades past that you served with at one time or another in your lifetime. There would be no central point of remembrance, I don't think. That would be very sad.
I agree. COVID-19, how has this affected this legion in particular?
Well, it's affected all of the legions in basically the same way. When we closed down completely in March, of course, we still have to maintain a building, we still have to maintain a presence, even though we can't have anybody in the doorways, so it costs a lot of legions a lot of money, and it may have cost them their legion because they couldn't recover from that. And then even on the opening, the reopening, and I can't blame people for it, but the number of people that came in before it closed are not coming in after it opened again, because there is a worry about catching this virus, and I can understand that in people. In particular, a majority of the membership of the legions is the older population and the more accessible ones to the COVID, so they're staying home, and I can't blame them for that. But of course, with them staying home, we're open, we're still incurring expenses and whatnot, so, how long can the legions do that? I don't know. We work very hard at it. We have a committee at this legion that works very hard at maintaining what we did before in order to pay the bills.
Absolutely. So the punchline, Canadians, during the pandemic, if we want to give a level of support, what could we do? How could we get involved? How could we carry this torch to move forward?
Come out, say hi.
Okay.
Come out, buy a beer.
Okay.
Come out and join us. And donate to your local legion.
Can you do that?
To help them survive, yes. I know
in the virtual world? Can you do that in the virtual world?
You
donate?
can do that through Dominion Command, or you can do it personally at your local branch,
Okay.
or at the branch in your area for survival. Donate to the general fund. And of course, the Poppy Fund is coming up, so that'll be an area of donation.
Thank you for taking us a little bit through a timeline here. We got an opportunity to hear a little bit about your experience being overseas, being enlisted. Thank you for serving for our country. And then number two is the extension of that, and how, once again, do we keep this torch going. We're going to be joined shortly by another individual that's representing the Hong Kong Commemorative Veterans Association. Carol is going to be joining us, but once again, thank you for taking the time, and keep safe during this pandemic.
We'll work at it.
Cheers. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're here with the second part of our interview today.
Okay, the Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association was formed in 1993 when we were asked by the Hong Kong veterans to start taking over some of the jobs. We were probably already doing these, helping them out in their association as associate members, but we had no authority to advocate with the government or any other agency to help them with getting pensions or benefits or any kind of needs that they had. So, so we formed the Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association, and basically it's family, friends, and mostly the sons and daughters of our veterans. So with that, we're set up as a corporation. We're registered in Ottawa because that's where our head office is, and we have a mission statement. The veterans asked us to look after three things for them when they asked us to form our association. The first one was they did not want their stories to be forgotten. Now, they really hadn't talked to any of their family members. They talked among themselves, but their stories were so horrific and unbelievable that another human being could be that despicable to one another, that they just didn't talk about their stories. So what they started in around the 90s, they started telling us some of the stories because they saw how many of their comrades were passing away, and with that is going to be the history, right? Because we don't know what went on. So we set up an education program on our website, which is www.hkvca.ca. There's a teacher's folder there where they can go in and get lesson plans and use that in their history programs or social science programs in school. And the second thing was they wanted some monument or some edifice with all their names on. They wanted each person that was in C-Force recognized for being part of that group of Canadians that went to Hong Kong. And so consequently, it was in 2003, I believe, we started fundraising for that, and working with the National Capital Commission in Ottawa. They granted us some land, and so it's on the corner of King Edward Street and Sussex Drive.
So that would be right by the hill, Parliament Hill.
Just down the street. It's by the bridge that you go over the Rideau Canal.
Closer to Rideau Centre.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So it's between the Parliament buildings and the Prime Minister's residence or the Governor General's residence. And it's right there by the bridge. It's a beautiful little park. And so we were very grateful to have that. So that we commissioned it, I believe, dedicated it in 2007. And so we used that to hold our ceremonies during VJ Day, Battle of Hong Kong date. So VJ Day is August 15th. The Battle of Hong Kong is the date that Hong Kong was bombed, which was December 8th. We do Christmas Day because that's when it fell, and we also do Remembrance Day.
Now, 75 years, this is our 75th year, correct?
Right now.
So you're talking about some dates. Can you talk a little bit about the 75th anniversary?
We really haven't had much of a celebration or acknowledgement of the 75th anniversary because of the pandemic. We had a national convention planned in Ottawa where we had many things going on to educate the people nationally about that. There was going to be government officials attending and whatnot, but as a result, people couldn't travel, and so it was canceled. So we are having a convention next year, and hopefully by then things will be better and we'll be able to acknowledge the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Hong Kong.
And for our viewers, you do have a head office out of Ottawa. However, you are a virtual association, is that correct?
We are a virtual association. Our board meets monthly, the last Wednesday of the month, and all the regional directors. I'm the Prairie Regional Director, so I represent Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. So we have all the directors that meet through teleconference, and we run our organization that way. We also, with our website, we have a lot of information there. Our newsletters, everything is pretty much done virtually. Of course, we have our senior members who may be not computer literate or whatever, so we do have hard copies and information that goes out by snail mail to keep them informed as well.
So that would be a terrific location to find much more history information on the association.
Oh, absolutely.
And really educate yourself to the association.
Right. On the front page, there's a place up at the top that says our sites. If you go up there, it has some indications of different sections. One of them is called C-Force. And in there, one of the fellows from Manitoba produced a database. And in there, there's every single one of the men. It has their military record from what they can access at that time. Because when we set it up, a lot of it wasn't past the date that you can access information. Like when my father passed, I have to wait 20 years, which is this year, to access his military record, right to Ottawa, and they will send you a copy of what his service record was. But so as far as the general information, that's up there about every single fella. Tells you what town he registered in, probably where his birth was, has his birth date and date of death, and some of the general areas that he served in. Like he would have been in Hong Kong. Not all of them went to Japan. A lot of them did, though. About 2/3 of the, or maybe even 3/4 of the men went to Japan, and they were used as slaves for the Japanese there to aid their war effort.
How many across our country veterans that were enlisted during war or active during the time of war are still alive that you're aware of?
Oh, I know. There's only 5 Hong Kong veterans left. That's what you're asking, right?
Yes.
5? There's 5 left. We have one here in Winnipeg, George Peterson. He's in Deer Lodge Center. The national president for the Hong Kong veterans is Phil Doddridge, and he's in New Brunswick. We have one other, George McDonnell is in Ontario, he's in the Toronto area, GTA area, I think. And I'm not sure where the other gentleman is 103. Just a character, and he lives in Nova Scotia, Cape Breton area. Hermodias Burnett, I think is how you pronounce his name. I can write it for you, but
So we were really in the midst of a dying breed here.
yeah.
For the children, or maybe even other Canadian citizens. How can we educate ourselves to the history and then move forward so that we can have a brighter tomorrow?
Well, like I said, as the men started talking, we tried to document these stories as much as we could. So those are up on our website. We also were going to do video interviews with them across Canada, and this was back in 96, 97, I believe. And when Veterans Affairs heard that we were going to do this, they said, that's a great idea. So they jumped on it, and so they were able to do it a lot more expeditiously than what we could have done. But each region was tasked with contacting the veterans in their area to get permission if they wanted to be interviewed. Then we set up timelines so that when the videographer and the interviewer came to our area, we had them come, and I believe they did it in, I can't remember the name of the hotel, they did it in a hotel down in central Winnipeg, and my dad was one of the ones that went down and was interviewed. So all of these were done on a VHS tape, and they were given a copy to the family, as well as they archived one in Charlottetown for the Archives for Veterans Affairs. And they have since been digitizing them and putting them up on the Veterans Affairs website, so you can access them that way as well.
Carol, with Remembrance Week and Day fastly approaching, if there's one thing from the Hong Kong Association that you would like to get across to our country, what would you like to say? What would be the mission statement or the punchline? And how can they support it?
Well, I don't think we should get rid of these special days in our history. By doing so, you negate the efforts and the deaths of the many, many, many Canadians in whatever theater of war. And that's totally wrong. And as Ron said, or maybe you said, we can't make the same mistakes twice. So by knowing what our history is, when we go into the future, hopefully we've learned something and we can progress to a better understanding of one another, so that we're not having these wars and these world wars. It doesn't really make any difference. I'm sorry. It does in the fact that we keep our rights and freedoms by fighting that what is wrong. But there's got to be another way of doing it other than killing millions of people for that. But I'm not sure. A lot of it has to do with people's backgrounds and their own history. Like with Japan, they had this Bushido code, and that meant that you died for your country. It didn't matter what. And that's why they had these kamikaze pilots, and why they were so rough on the prisoners of war, because they felt if you surrendered, and the Canadians didn't surrender, the British governor of Hong Kong surrendered he surrendered Hong Kong, but they said because you surrendered, you were a coward, and they didn't suffer cowardice. And so that's why there were so many beatings and so many people that were injured with bayonets and whatnot.
Carol, sitting here just sharing this dialogue and talking with you about the history, I really do feel that we are in the midst of a war. We're in a war against COVID-19 right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you think about the sacrifices that some of our veterans, past veterans, still alive, and the ones that have passed and served our country, the commitment that they made versus us having to wear a mask is a small task.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's something that I want to leave with Canadians, to remember that portion, to do their part. I really, really, really genuinely want to say thank you for taking the time to give us a little glimpse
Oh, you're welcome.
into what your association represents.
Thank you for asking.
And once again, before we part ways, if there's anything else that you would like to get across to the nation, now's your time.
Well, it's very important for people to remember that freedom doesn't come freely. It comes at a cost, not only for your country, but the people in the country, for the families that were left with no family member coming home, or ones that came home and were so broken that it was impossible to live with them. And ones that came back that were able to get through that horrific time and make a life for themselves. It should be our honor to carry forth and keep these dates and remember these people. Maybe not individually, but remember the reason why they went there, and reason why it's so important for us to have this freedom that we have in this wonderful country of Canada. But yes, you're right, we are fighting another vicious enemy, and it's not seen, so it's rather hard, but by wearing our masks and following the directives of our government and our medical people, we should be able to get through it.
I agree.
Yes.
Carol, thank you very much.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Ils sont nos pères, nos frères, nos mères et nos sœurs, nos voisins, nos héros. Les vétérans canadiens, leur courage, leur service et leur sacrifice ne seront jamais oubliés. Le 11 novembre, souvenons-nous d'eux. Un message du gouvernement du Canada.
Today our guest is Len Cook. Len, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Len, can you explain a little bit about your position and, in addition, where we are today?
Okay. Well, where we are today is we're at Assiniboia Unit 283 of ANAVETS, which is the Army, Navy, and Air Force Veterans in Canada. And I'm fortunate enough to be the president of the unit at this time.
Unit 283. So we're in Winnipeg, Manitoba. That
Right.
would suggest that there's 282
Yeah,
in the pecking order.
that's right. At one time there was.
Okay.
But our sister unit is Unit 284, which is in Steveston, BC. So we do go all across Canada.
Len, I'm very interested. There's a little bit of history here with the Army, Navy, Air Force. How do you differ from a Legion?
I get that question asked a lot, and I guess one of the things that I tell people, primarily the biggest difference between us and the Royal Canadian Legion is our age. ANAVETS, the Association, Army, Navy, and Air Force Veterans in Canada, was founded in 1840 by a decree from Queen Victoria. So we're that much older than a Legion, than the Royal Canadian Legion organization itself is. Basically, that's the difference between the two of us. We both have the same aims and objectives, and that's the care and so on of our veterans and our members. But other than that, that's the main difference between us.
Okay. Now, just to fill people in, what year did it take place that Canadian Armed Forces, I suppose, would have joined to move things into a different direction than where they were before?
You mean as far as the growth of the association?
Growth of the association.
Well, of course, it was Army first, and then the Navy came in. The Air Force came into the association, and then the name got changed to Army, Navy, and Air Force Veterans. The Air Force came into the association in 1946.
Okay. Now, I want to touch upon briefly, because it does trigger a little bit of memories, nostalgia for the association itself. When were you enlisted?
I joined the Royal Canadian Air Force in 1965.
Okay. What do you remember about the day you were enlisted?
I remember I had a motorcycle at the time, and I remember I had an appointment set up at the recruiting center in Hamilton, Ontario, to go and finish off the paperwork that I had to do. So I was on my bike riding out there, and actually I was looking forward to signing up and becoming a part of the military at that time.
I assume that there's a lot of memories associated with the number of years that you've been involved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this association is very important, is it not?
Yes.
Do you have any advice that you might want to give to military couples
Well, I know that from my time till now, there's been a lot of changes in the military regarding perception of couples and how families are perceived, and a lot of that goes back to the Military Family Resource Center for providing assistance to families in the military. I think from my point of view, what I would like to see with military families is that when they get out of the military, that they have a place to go where they can feel comfortable and enjoy the company of like kind. And I would recommend very strongly that they join our association, Army, Navy, and Air Force Veterans in Canada, or join the Royal Canadian Legion. Both of us have a lot to offer in our club rooms, and I think we're both of the associations are very proud of what we do and how we do it. And it, for us anyway, it's part of our constitution that we provide club rooms for the gathering safely and of our members and our veterans. So that's why we all have our club rooms and why we try so hard to take such good care of them. Because they, as I mentioned to you as an aside earlier, we've gone a long ways from the old smoky, dirty, cheap beer associations that people thought legions and veterans clubs were. So I think we've come a long ways from that, and I think just our club rooms themselves indicate that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's gorgeous in here. Absolutely gorgeous. I would have to assume that this is probably one of the largest in the country.
I believe at one time we were the largest ANAVETs in the country. There were some Royal Canadian Legion branches across Canada that I believe were probably larger than ours. But I think right now, with our membership, I think we are definitely one of the largest veterans clubs here in Manitoba anyway.
Pulling on the heartstrings here a little bit. What does this association mean to veterans? What should it mean to veterans?
I think it means a lot. Our association, through our conventions and through our Dominion office in Ottawa, and going after the politicians, continually going after Veterans Affairs Canada for changes to the benefits and so on of veterans. That doesn't happen by accident, and a lot of that was done with lobbying with the governments over bylaws and resolutions that were passed at our Dominion conventions over the years that helped improve all kinds of things for veterans. It also, as I said, it also gives them a safe place to come in and just come out and relax. And I think that's important for everyone to have that type of outlets.
Absolutely. Glenn, how has this most recent pandemic of COVID-19 affected the club?
It's definitely slowed us down. We were the first wave hit in March. We were closed for 13 weeks. We had to maintain closure. We were able to open back up again on the 22nd of June, and the people have started to come back in. It's slow. It's always slow for us anyway in this club. It's always slow in July and August in the summertime. Summers in Manitoba are too short, and people want to go to the lake. They want to go to their cottages. They want to do the summertime things. So we were always slow in July and August, but this year it was even worse. I think one of the main problems was that a lot of our members are seniors, and they were, I believe, when we opened up again, they were still a little bit concerned about coming out. So a lot of them stayed home for a long time after we opened. Some of them are starting to come back now, but we still have those who, because of for health reasons or because of their age and that type of thing, they're still leery about coming out and being out in public. The masks, I think, is helping. People are starting to understand more and more. And I think we'll start to see, hopefully, once this next round is done, I'm hoping that we'll see more people coming out and enjoying the club rooms and just enjoying being here.
Enjoy the new normal.
Yeah, whatever that's going to be when it's done, yes.
Why is it important to keep the doors open?
Well, I think we've touched on some of that. We need to provide a place for veterans. And I think that veterans clubs are finding it extremely tough as it is right now. If we have to close again, it's going to be tough on a lot of places. We're in an enviable situation with some of them because we own our own building. But a lot of places, a lot of the Legions and a couple of the Army Navy Vets clubs here in Winnipeg are renting their space. And if you are closed and you have no income and the landlord still wants his rent and you still have your utilities and so on, if those doors are closed, the chances of some of us not being here down the road gets more huge all the time.
So let's talk about support. A lot of businesses, companies, association organizations are pivoting to an online virtual world. Is that an area that you have support? Do you see any future in that direction? Or are you at a standstill and searching for help?
Yeah, that's basically, I think that's where we all are. I don't envision an online virtual Anavets. I'm not sure that that's even possible. Most of what we deal with our veterans is one-on-one contact and inviting people in and saying, come and enjoy yourself. Come and see who we are. Come and see what we have to offer.
There's a mural that just got put onto the east side of the building. Len, can you tell citizens, veterans, how to come down, where you're located, and see this gorgeous mural?
We're located at 3584 Portage Avenue, and right on the corner of Portage Avenue in Bedson is the YMCA, and the mural is on the east side of our building, which is easily accessible through the YMCA parking lot off of Bedson. We're extremely proud of it. It was done by two local artists, and Pride Winnipeg was involved. They've done a great job on it, and we did our official unveiling on Friday. And we had our Member of Parliament, Marty Morans, was here, and John Reyes, who's the military envoy, was also here for the unveiling, and we were glad to see them here, and we're very proud of it.
And notwithstanding that, there's also one other thing that I think that you should see outside, that people can get involved and provide support, contact, and reach out. Yeah. Can you tell us about the flags that stand outside?
Well, we fly, first of all, the Canadian flag, and then we fly our association flag, which is the same as this one here without the Assiniboia Unit 283 logo on it. It's just the association flag itself. And then depending on what's happening, we fly the Manitoba flag or we fly the City of Winnipeg flag as well. And we have, right in front of the flags, we have the open cross design cenotaph that's been there since we moved into this building in 1991. And that's another thing that we're very proud of is what we have out in the front of our building, commemorating our veterans and the war times that they served in.
So even if the hours have been reduced, nevertheless, you could still get in your vehicle, drive by, see what West Winnipeg has to offer. Len, short of anything else, I'd like to say thank you very much for taking the opportunity to give us some insight, history. We need to know where we were in order to know where we're going.
Exactly.
Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered everything pretty well.
Okay.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, this is our memorial wall. All of the names and all of the people here have supported not only Unit 283, but also our association either in Provincial Command or Dominion Command. We've had provincial secretaries, provincial presidents, members of the Provincial Executive Council. We also have, fortunately, 3 members of our association who were Dominion presidents. John Thompson, one of ours, the Dominion president from 2006, 2007. But we have these on the wall so that we remember them through the years. There are a couple that are missing here that we still need to get done. But this is another one of our Dominion presidents, Stan Stillwell, from 80 to 82. And this is one way that in the unit we remember those that have served both the unit and the command.
They are our fathers, brothers, mothers and sisters, neighbors, heroes. Canada's veterans, their courage, service, and sacrifice will never be forgotten. On November 11th, let's remember them. A message from the Government of Canada.